Right. Looks like we may be live. All right, we are streaming. Beautiful. So it's Tuesday. Welcome to anyone who's been following along. Our weekly tea talk. Just a few minutes late. I do have my tea though, right here. Love it. And I'm here with my dear friend, Kristen Quattlebaum, and we're going to chat with you a little bit today about masterminds and working in the collective, working in community, but also working in spaces where we're all really sharing our mission on this planet, right? Tuning into our purpose, sharing our gifts, right? Because we're all here for that reason, right? To share our gifts, to discover what they are and then share them. And so Kristen and I have been working together for a couple of years now and have created a space for women that I'm really excited about. Sorry, men, you can still listen. But what's really happened is the two of us have tuned into the messages that we really want to share in this world. And we were getting together on a pretty regular basis, doing certain kinds of work, realizing that it would be really amazing to extend that space to other women and to hold that space for other people to come along on the journey. So without sounding like super mysterious for far too long, let's just talk a little bit, Kristen, about purpose and what we're here to do. So I'd love it if you would share a little bit about you, as if, someone of this woman for time now, because she just decided at a certain point that the paradigm that her life was in didn't work for her any longer, right? So she sold a townhouse and became this nomad, intuitive coach out there in the world, sharing her gifts, but moving from space to space. And it takes a lot of energy work to be able to move into these spaces and to root and ground and connect and then like uplift and do it all over again, right? Kristen's like, yeah, I know. So I needed 3 hours of massage yesterday. So I'm just going to turn it over to you to talk a little bit more about who you are and what you're here to do, Kristen.
Yeah, so I think I'm still on that journey. I have a pretty good idea of the direction I'm headed in, but even yesterday in my Reiki session, Missy said to me that she saw me walking on this horizon between two sunsets, and she said it was so beautiful, and she said, you're definitely on your journey. And sometimes I'm not going to lie, like I'm going to be very vulnerable and where I'm at right now. Like sometimes I feel quite alone walking on this purpose path. I'm walking into this space. I'm on this intuitive journey and I don't know where I'm going. There's a part of me, like there's this deep part of me that knows that I'm just walking this path of trust and believing that like my path is unfolding as I take those steps, but also there's this other, the mental part of me that's like, I don't know where that's actually going to land. And part of that is scary, but part of that is also really exciting. So, for those of you that don't know, a big part of my journey was in corporate, similar to Melissa. And I was always striving to find where I belonged in corporate. I was always trying to find the path, my belonging, where I fit in. I kept having my mentors say to me, Kristen, where do you want to be in 5 years? Like, we'll put you on that path. I had very supportive mentors. And yet I still struggled finding fulfillment because everything I picked, every next thing I picked, I would accomplish and then I didn't feel fulfilled anymore. It's like I wanted to keep moving and going. And it wasn't really until I turned within that I found me again and found like releasing everybody else's path and everybody else's dream, and this idea of how your life should look. And so that's what I did in my journey. I turned inward and I started discovering myself. And that's the path that I'm on. I'm on this path of continuing to unfold these parts of myself and walk that journey. And so I'm passionate about helping others to light up within themselves who they are and releasing all that noise and conditioning around who we've been told to be, and help others have the courage and the tenacity to stand in their truth and to walk their path, even if it looks different from the rest.
And you do that through a lot of different types of services. I know this. I mean, I know you do coaching, and you do readings, and individual work and group work. And, to reduce it down to something that simple, just sounds so silly, because what I experience in working with you is something, transformative and profound. And so it's hard to even put into words sometimes, I think, to talk about this kind of work, like as we move forward. And in just a couple minutes, we'll share a little bit more about the invitation that we have. But, sometimes even making the invitation feels silly, because it's like, you don't understand the space or the experience or the energy of it all until you're in it, right? Until you're in it and it's happening. So,
and this space,
go ahead.
This space, I just want to say, like, this space is really a collaboration between the two of us. And so I wanted you to share a little bit about your purpose, because your purpose has so much to do with this space, and both of ours does, but yours specifically, I feel, is this like foundation.
Thank you. Yeah. So, honestly, I think that it's a great time for me to really begin to share a lot of this, because it's just been happening in quiet nooks and crannies, right? So I've done some in-person events over the last couple of years, and I've been teaching yoga, and people are getting to know what it is I'm tuning into. But truly, what I know I'm here to do is to help people kind of reclaim their sovereignty and tune back into their own inner and ancient wisdom that resides inside of us. We live in a society that loves to tell us, like you said, Kristen, how to live our lives. There's these sort of like prescribed milestones, and there's these stages that we're supposed to walk through. And then on top of all of that, there's really a tuning out of our own inner wisdom, right? And we're so busy and listening to everybody else's messages about what life is supposed to look like, that we lose that connection, right? We lose the connection, that knowing, that deep inner knowing, and the ability to trust it when we hear the little nudges. I think I've spent far too many hours watching the movie Frozen, but when Elsa is getting the call, I just think about all the women that I know who have gotten that call, right? It's like that nudge, that there's something more, that maybe there is, something to peel back here. And then there's often a process of disillusionment and realizing, that you've been living according to somebody else's standards or ideas or wisdom for so long, and now it's time to tune back into you. And it can be really scary and daunting and frustrating, but also tremendously liberating and exciting and freeing in ways that we can hardly even know, again, until we're walking that path. Right. And so what's happened for me over recent years, after this 10-year career in finance, and then having this beautiful business of mine to help me bridge into beginning to walk my own path on this journey, is my own journey, right? It's my own unfolding. Similar to what Kristen shared, there's just been a lot of like peeling back the layers. There's this process of kind of like unbecoming to become, right? What we're truly meant to be. It's like strip back all the noise, and there we find our true essence. And what I love is using tools to do that. I love using things like yoga and Ayurveda and lunar wisdom and Enneagram and all these, Kristen brings, human design. And we just have all these different tools in the toolbox that are literally just lenses, different ways to help us see and reclaim that wisdom. Right. And so I feel like I'm a guide, right? As I sit here looking like a farmer right now. It was outside playing with plants, and we'll return there. But, I know that I'm a guide. I'm a guide that is meant to help people, find and walk their path. And I was having a beautiful conversation with a friend yesterday about it. It's like when we first wake up to our own truth, there's this deep desire to go like shout it out to the world. But one of the biggest mistakes that we can make is assuming that our truth is everybody's truth. Right. And certainly after 15 years of coaching in the business that I'm in, right, I have come to see frameworks that do work in helping people find their own truth and their own path. But I know that my truth is not your truth, is not another person's truth, right? We're all going to come to our own understanding of what this life is about. Anyways, I digress. Back to how this work came to be. So Kristen and I just really started to show up to space together to work from this perspective of like, how do we look at our lives in this seasonal perspective, right? Like about once a quarter, we're kind of like looking at the quarter ahead going, okay, what's next? Right? And holding space for expansion. Even going into the winter months, what does that expansion look like internally, right? And then on a pretty regular weekly basis, taking time to look at the week ahead, reflect on the week that passed, and have these beautiful rhythms and cycles to ride in our life, realizing what a benefit it is to have each other in our lives to keep showing up to that space. So then it was just like light bulb moment. Oh, what if we open this up to other women who are really committed to this work, committed to the work of like, peeling back what isn't meant to be there, distilling down to our true essence, showing up to give our gifts in the world, to live our purpose path. And to do that on a cyclical basis so that we can tune in to the way that we are meant to exist in this life. We are meant to be creatures of nature. We're meant to tune into our own actual cycle and to tune into, the cycles of nature, the seasons of the year, the seasons of our lives also, and the archetypes that correspond, whether we're talking about, being in the mothering years of our life or the enchantress or the wise woman or the maiden. And all of this might sound a little foreign to you, but if it even just piques your interest a little bit, this is the space we're creating, right? So we will, from here on out, be hosting a 90-day or 3-month or seasonal mastermind with a different theme every season. And it was very easy to know what those themes would be because we've been through the seasons together. And we know that if we don't make way for the really expansive energy that comes through in summer, then it'll just pass us by, right? And if we don't create space for the deepening and the flow of fall, then, sometimes it can actually knock us down. And if we don't tune in to the need to go inward in the winter, then we deplete ourselves trying to behave the same way in the winter that we did in the summer. Well, the energy is just not there. It's feeling like we're doing it all wrong. We just can't get anything right. Here it's about do and how do we create be the beautiful creatures that we are. So Chris ran really long, but I'd love for you to talk a little bit that we're creating, and our first call is actually.
I froze for a moment, so tell me what you want me to talk about.
I want you to share your perspective on our space and first call this Thursday.
So for me, you know, as Melissa spoke about the seasons, it's really interesting because initially she said to me, I think that we should change what we were just talking about, like some logistics and stuff. And she said, I think we should change the theme each season, every 90 days, you know. And I had a moment of resistance. And I was like, what do you mean? Because I'm thinking we're gonna create the branding and everything for this whole thing, and then we're gonna just change it. And then I thought, wait, actually, that's brilliant. Because to her point, like when Melissa and I connect every week, and we've grown a really deep friendship over the last few years. When we connect, she does such a beautiful job of reminding me when I can be hard on myself, or like I want to be moving and I'm not moving, you know, and I just feel stuck or something like that, you know, and she'll remind me, like, this is like the cycle that you're in, like this is like the period of the season. This makes total sense to me, you know, and she does such a great job at reminding me of that. And so I'm always on the other side of our calls saying, okay, well, you know, we've been jamming on this stuff for a while. And I think I want to kind of go over here now. And I just hold space for all these different expansions, and always just like, how can we move to the next level? Like, how do we take this up a notch? You know, and Melissa and I can get lost on our phone calls sometimes, just talking and masterminding about things, like lost in a good way, right? Like just jamming on everything, anything and everything. And it's exciting to be in a space like that with other women that are like on the journey and care about the same things. And, you know, and we still have struggles, you know, and it's about the whole journey. It's not hiding from the shadows. It's going deeper into them. It's allowing ourselves to be seen in them, and also in our light too, right? Like another thing, like being reminded, yesterday I pulled cards about, I think it was the Six of Wands. I'm not like a tarot expert, but the card was all about like reaping the benefits of what you've sown, like acknowledge yourself, celebrate yourself. And that's something that I don't always do, because I'm always moving to the next thing. And so this is another thing that Melissa does, and it annoys me sometimes, you know, and she's like, what can we celebrate, you know? And you know, that's why I said, you know, specifically that she lays this foundation for like these rhythms. Like she reminds you of your own rhythms. And then the energy that I feel that I bring into it is a lot of space holding. So I've grown my capacity to hold energetic space. I will be also just perspective, right? Like I have this ability to go deep into the root of things. So if I see like a pattern, like roots and patterns of things, like I can just pick right out of thin air. And that's the gift that I bring, you know, it's like, I'm going to help to clear the static that's in the space and say, hey, wait a minute, we've been talking about this for a few times, and just bringing light to the things that are asking to be shifted and opened at that time. So as Melissa said, like the work that I do is very transformative, because I do a lot of work in the subconscious space. So I'm bringing the unseen to the seen. And yeah, I just, you know, Melissa and I have gotten to know each other on such a deep level now that we can have the hard conversations with each other and move through it. even if it's uncomfortable. And there's real beauty in that for me, because I don't have a lot of personal, intimate friendships, so to be in spaces that are cultivating that is important to me, especially on the journey, but also like giving space to allowing people to fall away where they're meant to fall away, right? And this mastermind celebrates seasons, and it celebrates like, maybe you're feeling really on for summer and like you want to start to make some changes in your life, so you want to dip into this mastermind. Also, like it can be for business and it can be for yourself. It doesn't have to be like I have this plan to move forward. It can really be like I have this plan to go inward and I don't know what that looks like, but I just want to be around women who will support me on that journey. And I do want to say as well is that this is a space of self-leadership. It is a space to show up and lead yourself, to stand in who you are in your own power. And we will be there to hold that space and to witness you and see you in doing that. So like there is this level of responsibility that I'm going to say, like, I'm asking to be in this space, where if you're struggling with something, if I'm struggling with something, it's my responsibility to bring it up and say, hey, like I'm struggling with this, and I'm not going to show up and pretend that this isn't happening. That's where we start to make shifts and changes. Like when we rely on ourselves to see that, because everybody's on their own journey.
Right. Kristen, a beautiful image came to mind recently, and I know from your time in corporate, the feeling of hamster wheel. Right. And I'm sure, some of you listening know the feeling of a hamster wheel, whether we're talking about parenting or we're just talking about life or we're talking about work, but it's a circle, right? It's a cycle in and of itself. You're coming around and meeting the same point over and over again. Think about a slinky, right? So when I think about this mastermind, I think about taking that hamster wheel and now we're actually going to create the slinky, right? So that you stop coming around to the same place over and over again. And then it becomes a growth trajectory, right? And then we can use those places that we come back around to as launching off for what's next, right? Like what next, evolution or revolution around this thing called life, what can I create here? What am I seeking? What am I looking for? And to your point, Kristen, I really appreciated your vulnerability. So if you're coming on and you're listening just now, you can go back and, Kristen shared very vulnerably about how lonely this work can be. She's taken that a step further and she's like, I'm just going to, travel around everywhere and do this work. So makes it even more lonely sometimes, right? It also allows for greater connection and community in those places, but the journey itself can be quite lonely. And here's the reminder that I have continuously, day after day, we're not meant to do this work alone. If you go back to the way our ancestors lived, if you go back thousands of years ago, this work, this evolution of life, this living every day is not even meant to be done alone. Right. And so that's part of why so many of these spaces are popping up. And there's more communal offerings now than ever. You might get frustrated looking at all the ads and the notifications and all the things and all the invitations. But the reality is it's because many of us are tuning into the fact that we are here to cultivate that sense of connection and community. And we're here to hold space for the work to be done together. And so, whether you're a parent who's asking, like, how do I experience a, deeper sense of fulfillment in this phase of my life, right? Like, how do I love more deeply in my relationships and my marriage, or if you're talking about business, whether it's something that you're dreaming about starting or it's something you're already doing, you know, how do I show up fully and authentically for the work that I'm here to do? If those kinds of questions are on your mind and heart, this might be a space for you, right? We will be together for 4 months this time because we want to start on the seasons, which the next one doesn't start until summer solstice, so later in June. So for the people who come on board, you're actually going to get that 4th month for free. And if there's any bit of this that just piques your interest and you want to have a conversation with one of us, reach out, because that's what we're here to do, is to help people make good decisions about where they're at and who is meant to be in this space. I'm going to tell you if you're looking for something entirely different and this is not the space for that. I'm going to tell you, right? I'm not here to sell you something or to bring you into a space that isn't meant for this part of your journey. And when we talk about journey, Kristen, you're so right. It's like, it's not, this is just the journey of life. This isn't just about business. It's not just about parenting. It's not just about friendships and relationships. This is the whole package, right? So this season is called Rise. You know, it's a theme and an archetype and a story and a way of being that shows up over and over again, especially when it comes to summer. Like the sun will continue to rise, right? And how many of us are inspired by being able to turn obstacles into opportunity, like the phoenix rising, right? That kind of story, that kind of mythology, that kind of archetype is so powerful for us, you know. And then we are truly here to be the rising tide that lifts all boats. So if this season feels like the right one for you to come and join us, please do. Please do. Kristen, do you have any final words of wisdom that you would like to add before we sign off?
I want to share a piece of imagery that came through in my Reiki session yesterday.
Please do.
One more invitation. So the imagery that I saw in the beginning of my session was me going into this beautiful field, and there was these huge stones. And there was a woman sitting there that I believe is me in like another timeline. And I sat down in this circle, and the circle was empty. And I feel like a big part of my journey is going to be about going back to this space as an anchor, as I'm traveling, as I'm moving, and finding the women, the wisdom keepers that are meant to sit at this circle with me. And maybe it's different versions of me. I don't know. You know, it could be different versions of me from other timelines. I don't know what it looks like, but there's something really beautiful about having that anchor to come back to, right? And looking at this space as this sort of anchor, and like, I'm on my own journey, I'm in my own space, but I can always come back here in this circle as an anchor. And then I always say, I always close with, if something in you sparked while Melissa and I were speaking, that is it's a soul to soul connection. That is my soul speaking to your soul, Melissa's soul speaking to your soul. And so I always encourage you to follow that, because there's something in your soul that lit up and responded. And so when that happens, the beautiful thing is we can't turn it off, you know? So how you choose to navigate it from here is entirely up to you. I do have a meditation that guides you into connecting with your intuition to make decisions as well. So if anybody would like that and you want to comment on this, I'm happy to share that as well. And yeah, that's all I have to share.
I love that. Yeah. So comment meditation if you want to get that copy to help you tune in, whether it's to make a decision about this or something else. And the final thing that I will say here is that the last few years have really allowed many of us a bit of spaciousness to get clear on what is and is not working in our lives. Right? And so if that call is in you, that there's something more, there's something different, there's something else being asked of you, this is also the anchor to be able to drop into a space where you can be held safely to figure out what that is, right? When I talked about frameworks earlier, there's really no one way, right? Like if there's somebody out there on the internet that's telling you that their way is the only way, then you know that something's wrong. But I will tell you that the way to find your way on your own path is through really identifying and connecting to, and quite literally auditing and inventorying your values.
Mhm.
That is your internal compass. That is what helps to guide you. And I know that the support I received in helping grow through that space some 6-7 years ago, right around the time my son was born, is invaluable, right? Because once you connect with your own internal compass, there's no turning that off. There's no unknowing it. There's no off button, right? All there is like the ability to find true freedom and sovereignty in your life. And that is a beautiful thing. And so I'm done, I promise. But I'll share some links in the comments below, and reach out if you want that meditation or if you want to have a conversation. We're here for that. And I want to thank everyone for tuning into this week's Detox. Bye, everyone.